Hello and welcome again to the Noise Brigade. I'm Bobby. We've got Tom with me, and this is going to be our follow-up to the reboot. So, Tom, let's kick it off, man.
Let's do it, and thanks again for listening. And we'll try not to stay 5 hours this time. Yeah, man. I figured we were kind of chit chatting beforehand, and we were gonna dive into some different topics that we hadn't covered before because we've done, and we're gonna hit some again today with wrestling and whatnot, and but we've really barely scraped the surface on sports outside of video games. Baseball, I think, is a good place to start because what season's right around the corner, isn't it?
Yeah, we're not that far away. Phil's home opener is coming up soon. We're actually going to have fans in the stands, which is amazing.
Yes.
Um, I
Yeah.
know I'm happy to hear that. It's I'm glad they played because it gave us a distraction, but it's man so weird to not have the fans. I'm so glad they're back.
Exactly. But yeah, you had made a note here, and I think this is certainly something we could talk about here for a while. It's interesting. So some potential rule changes, and I know if I'm not mistaken, they're implementing these in AAA this year.
Yeah, it's in the minors. I don't remember if it was AAA or if it was International League or which league it was, but they were talking about a couple different things, and one of which was bigger bags. Um, and I don't know if it's necessarily a player safety issue. I would assume that's what they're going with that is player safety. So you're not having the potential for collisions. I don't know if it's to like juice the offense a little bit, give a player more space to reach for on a bag when they're going like when they're sliding into a bag or that kind of stuff. I'm not quite sure what it's supposed to translate into, but that was one of them. One of them too was for pitchers is you have to fully disengage from the rubber before you're able to attempt a pickoff. And if you attempt your pickoff move and you're still touching the rubber at all, it's going to be a balk.
Right, and that one was pretty interesting to me. I wonder, as far as the full disengagement from the pitching rubber itself, um, how much that's going to uptick. At least obviously not now in the majors, but where this is being further tested out, because that's one of those things. I've watched baseball pretty much my entire life. Um, Balks are just not common at all.
Right.
They happen, but it's certainly not an every game thing. And when they do happen, you're kind of like befuddled as to, well, what do you do?
Right.
So I think maybe this kind of cleans that up a little bit. I think you're right. It may, I don't know. It may cause more.
Yeah. No,
Initially, I don't know.
I think it absolutely it's going to cause more. And what it's going to do too is it's going to take away the advantage that left-handed pitchers have from picking picking runners off of first. Because if you think about it, if you've got a runner on first, you've got a left-handed pitcher, they can stand looking right at first, right at the bag, and they don't have to move like they're not, it's not as hard as it is for right-handed pitchers. Right-handed pitchers, if you're going from a full windup, first of all, you're not going from a full windup on a potential pickoff play, but you've got to move your body more than you have to as a left-handed pitcher.
Right.
Left-handed pitcher can just throw a dart, just standing in their stance, and then dart the ball over the first, and you've got a better chance of picking somebody off. It's kind of
Right.
evens the playing field a little bit. I won't say fully because you can still, it's still less movement that you need as a left-handed pitcher, but it kind of levels the playing field a little bit between lefties and righties.
Right. And I might make it more interesting. And I think the other thing too, going back to the larger bags, I believe I read they're going to increase from 15 by 15 to 18 by 18 inches on the size of the bases. But in kind of like the full disengagement from the pitching rubber, it kind of increases the short game a little bit. So maybe beefs up like those people that are more apt to bunt, get on base. That might maybe encourage small ball a little more.
Yeah.
Make it a little bit more exciting. Whether or not that comes to fruition, I don't know. But we went through such a period there where that was kind of dead, and I, you know, actually I forget where I saw this, but they were. I saw an article or something on Twitter talking about, um, bunting Ricky Henderson over in the first inning. That doesn't happen at all now with anybody, you know.
Right, right.
So I really think that hopefully that kind of makes return, because to me that's what makes baseball exciting. Yeah, home runs are great, but small balls really what kind of keeps me entertained. I hate just seeing well, here's a fly out, here's a line out, here's this, because they're not just trying contact, they're trying to smash it every time.
Right. There's no nuance to the game. It's
Exactly.
now see now on the flip side of that, they're also talking about eliminating the shift altogether too.
Right. Yeah, I saw that too. That to me, that's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more against the shift than I am for it, but simply because I watched it destroy Ryan Howard.
That's exactly what I thought of.
So that's my thing. It personally attacked me as a Phillies fan, as a Ryan Howard fan. So screw the shift forever. But it's a valid defensive strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
If a guy's a pull hitter, you're playing towards the line. You're going to play you're playing your center fielder to the gap that he's going to be prone to hit to. So it's kind of like that. Um, I mean, whether you want to say it damages the game or not, I don't know. I'm not here for that argument. I don't feel strongly enough about it now that Ryan Howard's not in the league anymore. And I guess Reese Hoskins kind of has been a victim of it as well. But I I don't know, man. I kind of I kind of like eliminating the shift, but I also kind of feel like, look, if you're a complete player, you can beat the shift.
Right. Oh yeah, no, I agree. The My whole thing is if that's part of the playbook, if that's part of the rule book, then by all means. I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't feel one way strongly or the other until it starts affecting our players.
Right.
So,
Right.
that's kind of where I'm at with it. But again, if by rule, if that's something that they can do, which they do now, then by all means, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's defensive strategy, and again, yeah, it's bad in the sense that it cuts down offensively, but that's part of the game. So it's interesting. I don't know. We'll kind of see where that goes, and maybe these uh, changes that they've implemented here in the high minors might, you know, might come out.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. So speaking of our beloved Phillies, there's been a couple things that have happened as far as the rosters are concerned coming out of spring training that are very interesting. One of which I don't even know if you saw yet, but I'm sure you could have seen this coming from a mile away. But they've officially not added Odubel Herrera to the major league team.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I was kind of torn to see, him even there in the first place. But then, you kind of think back, well, there's no charges anymore and whatever that. So it's like, look, you're paying him all this money. Let's see what you got out of him. Let's give him a shot. That to me was my understanding as to why he was even there in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not making the team. I mean, yeah, that does not surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. The biggest thing to me was it was funny because you had people that they were against it, and then all of a sudden he was playing really well at the beginning of spring training,
Yeah,
and then people started to change a little bit. Now I've kind of been of the mindset, you know, I I was against it, but I also understood the whole idea, and I'm sure as did you, that the way that the MLB contract is written, you can't punish someone for something like that. You're not
right.
allowed, aside from what the league does, teams are not allowed to punish players with suspensions or by cutting them. They cannot terminate a contract based on that kind of, what he did, which he was accused of domestic violence.
Hmm.
And, his girlfriend or wife or whoever, his significant other, dropped the charges. So there was no pending charges. MLB had suspended him for 82 games,
Yeah, yeah, I think that was correct.
something like that. And so the Phillies could no longer punish him. The only thing that they could do is cut him for baseball related reasons, or option him for baseball related reasons. So they gave him a shot, and it looked like he was actually going to pan out as far as a player. But then by the end of spring training, I think he was hitting 238 before he got sent down.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that they were pretty short up anyway, especially after they announced that Matt Joyce was making the team. Um, in the outfield, I realized that obviously you have your McCutchen, Harper, Roman Quinn. Those guys were pretty much locks anyway.
Right.
But the minute Matt Joyce was announced, I was like, oof, I don't think there's a spot here for Herrera.
Yeah. And then Adam Hazley will be coming back at some point too.
Exactly. And the other thing too, and I noted this here yesterday, because they optioned somebody that has occasionally played in the outfield for the Phillies, Scott Kingery, which was really not a surprise to me, but it just kind of sucks because when he signed that deal back in 18, 6 years, 24 mil, and he had not even sniffed in the majors yet. I was like, hey, this is our Salvador Perez. We got a nice, cheap, young player, controllable. He's going to be awesome. And wow, that just, did not pan out at all.
Yeah. Dude, talk about takes that didn't age well, but I'm in the same boat. I was excited about it. I said to my dad, I said, all right, good. You know what? We've got our heir apparent to Chase Utley. We just traded Utley, I believe.
Mm-hmm. In that same time frame, yep.
Yeah, and so I was like, all right, this is the heir apparent. He's going to step up. He's going to play. And good God, were we wrong?
Yeah,
and I mean, he's shown flashes.
Yeah,
but
I still like him, and I really hope maybe he figures it out. But man, just not that and again, not that it's like an albatross type contract, but you're paying the guy in the millions, you expect him to be in the majors.
Right, exactly, and that's the thing. And I think honestly, he'll go down, he'll get himself straightened out. Even if he has to meet with like a sports psychologist or something, or anything like that, but he'll get himself straightened out. He'll be back up in the majors, if not by the All-Star break, by the end of the year when the rosters expand.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully going from there, this will be the step forward that he needed, and this will give him the push that he needed to get himself right and to get back to what the potential that everyone saw in him.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And hopefully that's the case. And the good thing too is that he does have a lot of major league experience. He's gonna, barring any, injuries, knock on wood, I really think that, he'll be back. It may be quicker than I think, but he just really, to me, just needs to figure it out. I really like him. It's like you said, I made that same kind of transition. We're moving on from Chase Utley. I really like this guy. I really hope he pans out. And so far, just, not a whole lot. And I already mentioned before, but to me, this was our Salvador Perez signing. That the reason why I bring him up, even though he's a catcher for the Royals, that contract that he signed initially was like 5 years and $7 million. Is some real low thing, but it had a ton of options on it. The guy's a 6-time All-Star, right. So it just, I was really hoping for that. And so far, and maybe we'll get there, but so far not there yet.
So speaking of the controllable contracts and players signed to team-friendly deals, I'm going to transition into one of the other local teams. Just a quick, because we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Eagles and their draft pick trade. So I'm seeing all kinds of stuff left and right, whether people like it or hate it. And I'm so torn because I figure, yeah, you know what? We need to restock. We need to surround young Jalen Hurts with some real talent. And the more picks we have, the better off we are. And if, we can't, if he turns out that this year he's not the guy, now we have picks to try and do something to move up and get a quarterback that could be the quarterback of the future. But that said, I really wanted Kyle Pitts, the tight
Yeah, I
end from
saw you.
Florida. I thought that was going to be the pick. I thought that was awesome. That was going to be his security blanket. Um, and that got blown up unless somehow he falls to 12, which there's no way in heck
No,
that he's
no,
going to
yeah,
fall.
he ain't going that low unless something crazy happens. But
Yeah.
and that would be such a nice pairing with Godare. Uh, but unfortunately, you know, and maybe who knows? There's I'm sure there's something that we're not really seeing here with it. But uh, uh, the Hertz, the one thing I was glad with is that, and again, this is going to sound funny, but I'm glad they signed a backup that has a lot of obvious and pretty good starting experience. That's a completely different quarterback. This way, you're not kind of running, you know, completely, in the same direction.
Right.
And I think Hertz could learn a ton from Flacco
Oh,
personally.
absolutely. Absolutely.
You
And it's
know,
nice to have the local boy back home.
exactly. So I really do like that. Now, whether or not they end up making anything out of the draft, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
How he kind of sucks at drafting.
yeah. So, but now it's one of those things. I saw you comment about Pitts, and yeah, it kind of, kind of a dark cloud over that one. But what are you gonna do? It's I guess it kind of just makes it a little more interesting to see what they do from here because I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll say too is that I'm glad, as much as I love Nick Foles and will all forever be in his debt, I'm glad they didn't bring him back because then you got another situation where, is Jalen Hurts looking over his shoulder like Carson was, and you don't want that situation again.
No, yeah, I was kind of the same way. I was really, kind of part of me was like, oh wow, I really kind of hope they bring him back, and then I realized, yeah, it's not good. We moved on.
Yeah.
This needs to, and initially when they signed Flacco, I was like, huh, and then I was like, you know what, the guy's a pretty fairly, decorated quarterback in the league. Uh, he's not obviously not Tom Brady, but he's a solid quarterback with a lot of many years running pretty decent teams. So,
Right.
he's had success, I guess, is where I'm really aiming for, and he knows how to win. He knows what it feels like. Just think that's good to bring in the locker room.
Yeah. And sorry to everybody out there if you're hearing what sounds like me wheezing and dying. That's my dog breathing, and I don't know why she's deciding to sit next to the microphone and make noise, but I can't get her to. She's she wants to sit by dad right now, so.
That's all good.
But speaking of the Eagles and quarterbacks and everything, so we've got to follow up again with NFL 2K5. So the good news is for the people of planet Earth, in 2009 in the NFL 2K5 universe, um, it stopped raining.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
So it stopped raining. It's been 3 games in a row now. Um, no rain. However, because there's always got to be a catch. Um, Brian Westbrook, who's my running back, and the starting quarterbacks that I've played the past 2 weeks have all gone down with long-term injuries. So it's like, all right, well, it stopped raining. The field's not a sloppy mess anymore. But now I can't start a quarterback without them getting hurt and being carted off the field and possibly having their lives and careers ruined for the rest, forever. So, um, again, don't know if it's a glitch, don't know if it's a feature. That's up to you to decide, the
So
listener.
no rain, but the field is still a complete disaster.
I think the field may have landmines. We may have ventured into
Mutant
mutant league
League.
football territory. That's all I can figure is that now there's just these massive. Maybe it's potholes. Maybe it's like in Philly after the winter, when when the snow and the ice clears up and everything, and then the roads just completely turn to crap, and there's like these sinkhole sized potholes everywhere, and you lose small children and smart cars in them. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I know you would have posted this, and yeah, it's interesting. I always like to see kind of where this stuff goes, and I know you're gonna keep on playing it, so you'll have to keep me informed.
yeah, I'm just waiting to see if aliens invade at some point. Um, maybe there's a crossover. Maybe Sonic the Hedgehog is a crossover since this was produced by Sega. Um, I don't know, man. I don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe
It's possible, but if you start him, he's gonna tear his ACL. So
that's true. That's true. He is. He's gonna, and he's not gonna go fast anymore. And then he's gonna get addicted to painkillers, and he's gonna be, it's gonna mess him up. I mean, I just don't want to see him go down that road.
no, but it's possible. So
It is. So while we're on the topic of video games, uh, I gotta say, Up Up Down Down is one of my favorite things on the internet, wrestling and video game related. Um, just overall, not even just wrestling and video game related. I love Up Up Down Down. I love the chemistry between Xavier Woods and Tyler Breeze and Adam Cole and all those guys. Um, Cesaro. God, who knew Cesaro was that gold on the mic? Because WWE never gets him
yeah,
the
he
freaking
doesn't
mic.
really let him talk. Yeah.
Um, but I was telling you earlier, I've been watching their March Madness tournament that they've been doing, and so they've been using Pokemon Stadium for N64. Um, have you watched any of it at all?
No, I haven't. I haven't. I just saw what you wrote down here though, and it just your little your little rant, man. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's it's frustrating because I'm always telling Peyton, I'm like, no, dude, you're not watching YouTube and watching other kids play video games when you've got a stack of video games. You've got like 8 systems. I For those of you who don't know, and Tom, you got to witness this abomination in person. I've got every Nintendo home system, a Sega Genesis, a 360, and an Xbox One all hooked up to my main TV in my living room. So
He
that's
does. I can verify that, and it's super cool though. So I mean,
so we've got all these game systems set up. Peyton has his own Switch. He's got his own PS4 in his room with PSVR, and he's got his own like Xbox 360 and Wii U and everything on his TV. And he's got all these games, and I'm like, dude, just play your own games. Stop watching other people play online. But now I can't give him crap for it anymore because I'm sitting here watching these
doing the
wrestlers.
same thing.
But I mean, and I get it now because they're funny. Like, all right, so they did like this tournament. It was, I think the first round was Liv Morgan versus Ember Moon, um, Dakota Kai versus Candice LeRae. It was Johnny Gargano versus Lindsay Dorado, and it was Jessamine Duke versus Ricochet. All right. So I watched all of the first round. And so Woods and Breeze act as commentators, and they're
Okay.
great. They're hilarious. Um, and so what they do is they like facilitate the whole thing, and then the players, or I mean the wrestlers, pick their teams and they go against each other, and it's fun. Well, poor Liv Morgan, like I she's adorable. And I'm not just talking her looks. She's adorable. And so, but the whole time, like she's talking about how much she loves Pokemon. She's got a little Pokemon stuffed animals, and Ember Moon's got her Pokemon stuffed animals. And dude, like Liv is saying stuff, and they are just trashing her.
Oh no.
And she's a good sport. She goes with it. And but she's like, at one point she tries to say, well, I think she was trying to say work smarter, not harder. And she said work harder, not smarter.
Oh, oh no.
And like throughout the whole thing, she's playing and she's like surprised when certain attacks happen and stuff. And then Breeze is like, well, yeah, but if you paid attention to the last 12 times you did that, it was the exact same outcome and stuff like that. Just like he's completely deadpanning it and no reaction. Like I don't know if she just didn't hear him or if she just wasn't paying attention, what the deal was. But like, oh my God, she was so naive and it was just adorable. But so I say all this to say, damn them for making me really want to play Pokemon Stadium because now, of course, I had to order it on eBay so that Peyton and I can play it because I had him watching it too. He was giving me that eye, like, haha, I told you you can watch, you should watch these
Yeah,
things. And he loves up, up, down, down too. Um, but it's just, God, that tournament, if you haven't watched it, if you like Pokemon at all, if you like wrestling at all, and you just like being entertained, I recommend watching it. I've watched almost all of it now. I think I'm up to the semifinals now.
that's cool. Yeah, and I haven't watched that part. I watched part of Up Up Down Down, and this was, gosh, going back a year or two now. I know Breeze and Woods did like the SmackDown versus Raw. I think it was 2006.
Yeah.
They did the draft and they went through and they did several weeks of that, and it was really cool to kind of see how that kind of played out. But they, you said this at the top of the Up Up Down Down bit here. They do really play so well off each other. I've always been a big fan of both of them for a long time now. So yeah, I have to check that out. That's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, and anything that they do is great, um, especially when they've got Adam Cole and Cesaro and them with them, like, and they're playing what was when they were playing Fall Guys and stuff, and they have like these super competitive Uno games that they play against each other, and it's just great, man. Um, I absolutely love their channel.
Yeah, that's cool. Staying in the wrestling vein, though, and this is something that you and I were chit chatting about before we started recording, and this I think could be talked about for a long time, but for the sake of time, we'll try to condense it as best we can. But recently, the WWE Network was announced that it was essentially importing all their content over to NBC's Peacock, which, for terms of as a user, subscriber, whatever, actually is kind of nice because it not only it cut the price in half per month, and you get all this additional content if you weren't subscribing to the premium on Peacock before. So WWE Network, for the longest time, that was a big joke. What, $9.99?
Yeah, they had the
And
T-shirts.
yeah, and now it's $4.99 on Peacock with all the other stuff.
Right.
So to me, it's a just looking at it that way, that's a win. But the thing that came out, I believe it was this weekend, was that they were trimming some of the content, or at least looking to trim some of it. And first thing in my mind, ECW.
Yeah, and that's the part that kills me because that's one of the big things that I like to watch on there when I do go and I dig into the archives is I'm watching old ECW stuff.
The and I said this again before we started recording, and I'm going to reiterate that here. The the crazy thing is that when you watch a hardcore TV on the WWE Network, it's filtered anyway. You know, uh, the music is different. There's certain things that just aren't the same. You don't get that same feel,
Right.
but you still get a lot of really solid quality match content. The other thing to that is, okay, let's port this over to a bigger venue, Peacock, in 2021. What do you think is going to happen? They're going to run it through the strainer one more time. What sticks? And that kind of bums me out because there's a lot of things there. At least I'm just using ECW as an example, that I'm not going to say they're going to be lost. They're
Right.
just be a lot harder to get. So
Right. I mean, and that's the
and
thing. You can turn to DVDs, you can turn to Blu-rays, you can turn to YouTube. Um, VHS, as Simon Miller from What Culture said. Um, and there's plenty of places to get this stuff. But to your point, yeah, a lot of the ECW stuff is already kind of damaged by the licensing of the music and stuff. And then this is just, I feel like this is gonna, for people going forward, a lot of people are gonna not really get the whole ECW thing after the network gets its way with it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And it's not just that. Smoky Mountain, I think, is another prime example of that. And I don't know if you've ever watched any of the Smoky Mountain content on the network. You can tell that it's toned down a little bit, um, but a lot of that is watching that is, to me, it's like ECW light, because that was kind of like the precursor to it. Because you have the Gangstas, and Tracy Smothers is in there, and that's when Chris Jericho and Lance Storm kind of make their I guess American debut, if you will, in Smoky Mountain as the Thrill Seekers. You have this really cool groupings of people that obviously all end up going straight to ECW. But so you'll have content like that that just gets whittled down or gone. And a lot of it with to me, like looking at Smoky Mountain, it was a different time, so I could see why it would be edited out potentially. I'm not saying that it is or
Right.
will be, but I could see why, and that's the I guess kind of unnerving part, because then you've posted a couple things here for us to discuss. Um, what about some of this just general WWF WWE content that
Yeah.
was pretty crazy anyway? But Katie
Brian
Vick,
Pillman.
yeah, the Brian Pillman stuff with Stone Cold, and the like the breaking and entering and the house stuff with the gun.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, I could see them just kind of like, let's sweep this under the rug.
I mean, and look, I, there's a bigger discussion to be had around, so-called cancel culture and all that stuff. And what, but what I would say with this is, people got up in arms when Disney put a disclaimer before some of their episodes of the Muppet Show from like the 70s, when there was racist characters and stuff on there. Well, what if instead of removing this stuff, now some of the stuff obviously I'm cool with it. Like the one clip I sent you was Vince talking about having a biker gang rape the Undertaker's wife. That can be removed. I'm
Right.
good with that. We don't need that. That shouldn't have happened then. I mean, we knew enough that rape has always been bad. Um, but maybe we put a disclaimer in front of some of it instead of cutting it all the way out.
Right. Yeah.
Like they
No.
do with the Benoit stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And because initially, if I'm not mistaken, boy, they just kind of acted like he didn't even exist.
Yeah.
And eventually, things kind of kicked back around. But my goodness, there's so many things you could think about now, and the one you just referenced with the Undertaker. uh, we mentioned this prior to doing this, 2003. I really wasn't watching it all then, so I have no frame of reference as to how things really were. I knew it was, kind of an off time. I know things were still kind of hot, but that was, to me, you've already eaten the competition, you've done everything else. So I just kind of quit for 3-4 years there. And those things, yes, to me as a fan, I didn't see it the first time, and I really don't care. But again, if you're going to start trimming it that way, then what's to say you're going to start trimming X, Y, and Z that I did see and that I did like, or that I did care about? Like perfect example, Sandman, ECW entrance. Well, don't like smoking, so we got to cut that out, and we're gonna have to shop in a water bottle. you know,
Daddy,
I
why is Stone Cold chugging Gatorade?
exactly. So again, like you said, I don't think this lends itself to a cancel culture type discussion. It's just a matter of, okay, you have the content, that, obviously was filtered in the first place, and for various reasons, royalties and monetary things, and things that are going to happen anyway. There's just nothing that is going to stop that. But then when it gets into the actual, well, this person said this one thing, we're just going to cut that, and then we'll just do this, and I don't know, slippery slope. I don't know.
I would be more like, instead of maybe cutting the whole segment, maybe if it's a word, maybe bleep that out,
Mm-hmm.
like we do with music. Maybe I mean, in certain scenes won't make sense. Like the one clip I put on here is Vince. It's a pretty inexcusable thing. Again, even for the time that it happened. Um, Vince walks up to John Cena backstage and he's talking to him and he goes, "Yeah, my," and says the N word. He says it with
Right.
the A, but still, old white man saying it to another white guy, and then the camera pans over and you see Booker and Charmel, and Booker goes, "Tell me he did not just say that."
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
obviously, I'd have to imagine that Booker was okay with it, seeing as he was in the segment, but at the same time, maybe we beep that out instead of
Yeah.
just cutting the whole scene.
Obviously highly scripted,
Right.
but exactly. And maybe that lends into what maybe would be the, I don't know, again, just kind of, thinking through this would be, the answer. It's like, okay, we have a radio edit version, and then we have the parental advisory version,
Right.
kind of like the music stuff, where it's like, okay, we have a song that's hot, but we can't play the full thing because of all the curse words and whatever. So we have to have a radio edited version, and then you buy the CD. In our in our day, that's what we did, kids. Um, had the sticker on it, but it had the real version of it, if you will. Maybe they do something like that. Maybe
Right.
they kind of say, okay, hey, here's a disclaimer on this, but if you're really not comfortable at all watching that, we've trimmed it down to something more palatable.
Right. Right. I mean, and that's even that's a good way to go about it too. Um, there's just different. There's so many different things you could do instead of just cutting, instead of putting stuff on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Again, now with the, that's not to say, I mean, certain things I'm always going to be on the side of, all right, let's bleep, like, I don't care what, what lens you look at it through. The Vince thing saying rape, I'm out on that
Right.
every time. 100 times
Agreed.
out of 100, I'm out on, let's have the Undertaker's wife gang raped. Let's,
Yeah.
that to me, even in the uncensored version, I don't I don't want that. I don't need that, you know.
No, no.
And that can be done away with. If it's something egregious like that, dude, no problem. You wanna bleep that out or whatever. But to your point, yeah, you know what? The Vince and Cena and Booker thing, if they want to do like you said, like an uncensored and a censored version, cool. Cool. I mean,
Yeah,
but
just have that disclaimer up front, like, hey, look, this was what happened. This was the deal. This is what you're about to hear, type thing. Like, you have to make sure that that's out there,
right.
regardless. And you know, but if the decision is just to trim it down and just to cut it completely, or at least bleep it, that at least have it where it's some kind of context where you can understand, like, uh, what happened,
Right.
if it has any bearing with the actual show itself.
I mean, because honestly, if you look at it, like, and I feel comfortable saying this on your behalf, but violence against women is bad.
Of course.
I think that, I'd say that most normal, civilized human beings can agree on that. In the 90s, man, and in the Attitude Era, there were a lot of dudes putting, I mean, God, the Dudleys put how many women through tables? Mae
Oh yeah.
Young, I
Yeah.
think even
That
like
that was happening, and that was just something that ran through with them in their career. They were doing that in ECW.
right,
That wasn't, and it was like, but that's what it was. It was just, oh, no big deal.
right. And now that said, that if they go and try and take that kind of stuff out, saying, "Oh, it's women violence against women," no, man, it's wrestling. It's called suspending disbelief. You know, if a superhero in a superhero movie is fighting a female villain and the female villain hits them, pretty sure they're going to do something back.
Yeah. Yep.
I
And,
mean, maybe
and
that's a bad example, but I, and I'm again 100%. You touch a woman, you deserve to get your you deserve anything that comes to you at that point.
right. And in the I think it was an interesting thing that come out that whenever I saw, you saw it too, and Peacock would think about trimming potentially some segments off, or whatever they're going to do. I don't know. But to me, wrestling is kind of like that last vestige, almost like comedy, stand up comedy, where you kind of had free will to kind of do whatever, and you were kind of protected by the barriers of entertainment, if you will, because you knew at the end of the day, this is all staged, it's fake, we don't really mean it. It's
Whoa,
just,
whoa,
it's,
whoa, 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 whoa! You said the F word.
oh, well, sorry. You know what I mean.
I'm just,
But
listen, man. I don't want I don't want anybody to come after us because the F word's getting thrown around.
yeah, I know. I didn't mean that in the sense of wrestling. I meant comedy.
Okay,
No, but
okay, good.
but it's all this. It's obviously it's a highly staged thing, both ways. Like stand up comedy is a very similar thing, um, and where you have and you have this where it's well scripted. You have this interesting dynamic of you pretty much can get away with whatever, but it's not necessarily uh completely allowed to just say everything,
Right, like
but
you
you have
you have more
a little
leeway.
longer leash.
Right, you have more leeway to say things in a comedic setting than you do just as Joe Blow, on the street.
Exactly. So I think that was the one thing that really kind of, I can't say struck a nerve with me. It was just more of an interesting thing to see, okay, what are they going to have trimming? Where's it going to go from here? And is this just kind of like the beginning of, more so, uh, again, cancel culture, wrong word, but just that content trimming, and what are we going to end up losing out? And I agree with you in saying some of the stuff that we're losing out doesn't mean a whole lot to me in the first place, because it shouldn't have been said in the first place anyway,
Right.
or happened in the first place. However, again, I'm also a big proponent of that slippery slope type thing. Okay, you do that, then where else is this going?
Right.
So I just thought that was interesting. Um, I did want to stay one more thing. We had a note here, and I kind of wanted to kind of talk about this too, in WWE in general, but just talent leaving. So, give me your take on Christian. What do you think?
Dude, so I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm the only one who wanted to see this, but I feel very strongly that I'm not. But Christian showing up in the Rumble with Edge, they're both back. Neither of them was supposed to ever be able to wrestle again. They're now both sharing a ring. After after the Rumble, Edge continues, which you knew was going to happen because we could see the writing on the wall with that. But was it just me, or did you think that Christian was going to stick around a little bit longer and there was going to be some kind of payoff at some point with having Edge and Christian in the same ring on the same side? Christian helping him win the title or something along those lines.
Christian goes to AEW, and it blew my mind.
I thought about it when they were when so Big Show of all people, goes to AEW, and then and so Paul White, Paul White is in AEW, and then announces we've got a big Hall of Fame worthy wrestler coming to AEW. And that qualifier, that Hall of Fame worthy,
Worthy. Yep.
tipped me. As soon as he said that, I was like, Christian, it's going to be Christian. Christian is coming to AEW after WWE completely dropped the ball on giving fans a storyline that would have been talked about for years.
And here's the insane thing with the to me, the Big Show leaving really. I was listening to, oh, I want to say it was 83 Weeks. Bischoff was talking about it. Um, again, Conrad Thompson. They were talking about Big Show in the sense of, Bischoff said it as far as when he was a Giant in WCW. Yeah, he was big and, he was athletic, but he never really had it. He wasn't like the top of the food chain, if you will. And then he goes over to WWF and if you think about it, the era that he comes in at, he's certainly not the top of the food chain. Yeah, he's a big guy. Over the years, he shows his durability and has some personality, but he's never the guy, ever. Yeah, he has some title runs here and there, but he's always, he's not mid card,
Right.
but he's not the top of the card.
Right.
He's an upper mid card type guy, which is a shame because his size alone was like, oh my God, next Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
So I can completely understand how he ends up in AEW. What I don't understand is how Christian does, just for the sheer fact that Edge and Christian had their own show on
Right.
the WWE Network for like 2 years.
And their
So,
own podcast.
yes.
Dude, let me tell you though, real quick, just to circle back to Big Show. Honestly, man, Big Show, the killer thing for me was the untapped potential because you mentioned Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant was not an athletic dude. He was a huge dude. He was super strong, great wrestler. Not trying to knock him at all. But Big Show versus him, as far as the athleticism, Big Show kills him.
Oh, every day.
And I feel like between that and how much he developed on the mic and how good his personality is and everything, WWE dropped the ball with him his entire career.
Oh, yeah.
Especially flip-flopping him between good guy or heel and villain or heel and face every freaking week. There was a point. Do you remember when
I remember? Yep, it was a joke.
Sometimes he would show up and then the next week he's in a diaper and he's Baby New Year.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. It was actually an ongoing joke.
Yeah.
On a lot of these websites that are no longer around. But I remember the Lords of Pain forums and some other things. It was like, oh, was he heel this week or is he a good guy? And like legitimately, like the next Raw would be like, oh, look at that, he turned again. And it's like, well, he's turned 6 times in the last like 5 episodes. Like, what's going on?
And I feel like it's just been such a and the way he describes the one meeting where they said, you're never gonna be at WrestleMania again. You're never gonna be in a meaningful match again. Your career's over. And somebody actually told him that. And he still showed up and did his work and did what he was supposed to do.
Right.
Until he had the opportunity to not. And I do not blame him one bit.
He was the consummate professional.
Right.
All day long. I've seen him give countless interviews. He's interesting. He really is. Obviously not near as interesting to me as Andre the Giant. And there's nothing against the Big Show. I just, find Andre's life to be way more interesting. But he, again, you said it, he's way more athletic. He had, these tools there, but he's misused from day one. WCW basically misused him too, in my opinion. Because like, oh, let's just call him the Giant, and we're gonna make sure that he's Andre 2.0. It not going to work.
Right.
And you have to have something for him, and that's all he was there. He goes to WWE. Yeah, he does some great things and really nice long career there. Uh, to be honest, I was not surprised to see him show up in AEW. The Christian surprised me more in that regard. Uh, but then the other thing too, and I've already mentioned his name in different contexts, but this one was funny. Eric Bischoff, he showed up at I think the first March episodes in AEW
Hmm.
episode. Uh, and then like it wasn't a week later, he's announced for the WWE Hall of Fame. Like, what is
Which is
going on?
well, and you're right. It's funny because it seems like anybody who does, like, if you even mention AEW aside from Sami Zayn, WWE doesn't want anything to do with you. And even Sami Zayn, I'm wondering if some of the burying that Sami Zayn got recently isn't from when he mentioned AEW
Oh, it's
on
gotta
air.
be. It's gotta be.
But uh, you know, I don't get it, man. I mean, I get it. I get it. You don't want to advertise for your competition, but all along, WWE has been saying that AEW is not competition.
Well, guess what? They are the only thing that, and I hope that they don't do this, is that right now, and again, I have nothing against Christian, nothing against the Big Show, but both guys are also not in their prime either. So I just hope that, for sake of, oh, we're just going to start scooping up people, you know, uh, this always cracks me up to thinking about WCW, the first people in New World Order. It's like, yeah, if you Hogan, Hall, Nash, you have Macho Man, you have these guys that are incredible, and they're probably more toward like Hall and Nash were kind of in their prime, but ish, and Hogan and Macho Man maybe toward the. I don't know if Hogan ever really had a prime, but it's another story for another day. But maybe obviously toward the end. But then it's like you bring in like Ted DiBiase, who I love, but then he's also not, you know,
Right.
not Ted DiBiase of when we grew up, And so I'm kind of hoping that doesn't happen in AEW, where it's like, oh yeah, these guys are just available, they're mad, let's just start scooping them up, and it's like, yeah, but they're not the same guys anymore. It's
Well, what I'll say for them is, and because I've been trying to watch as much AEW as I can, which is difficult without having cable, but I've been watching like Dark and I've been watching different things that I see them do. Um, One of the nice things, like, they don't have Christian going for the world heavyweight title.
right.
What they have Christian going for right now is he's going up against Frankie Kazarian, right? So what they're doing is they're trying to give them what they're doing is they're utilizing their star power to draw in eyes, but they're putting them in matches that, while um they're not like title matches, but they're still matches that people really want to see.
Right.
And at Big Show, or Paul White, since his shirts say "No More BS," um, he's he's basically like a hybrid announcer slash performer at this point, um, for the Dark Elevation. So, which is another one of their streaming shows. Which also, let me say this: I love the fact that they're putting their shows on YouTube for free for the Dark Elevation.
Yeah, that is cool. Like, yeah, that's good. It's just cool to have content out there that you don't have to, you know, dime out.
Right, right. Um, but I really like where they're kind of, with all of the guys that they have, well, most of the guys that they have that are your established names, they're using them more or less to help show, they're putting them on the show to get people to watch, but they're also using them to help showcase newer guys or people you may not have, you know, you and I know who Frankie Kazarian is,
Hmm.
but we've watched all different kinds of wrestling. To your WWE fan who's just tuning into AEW for the first time because they know that Christian is on there, which I don't know if there's a whole lot of those kind of people, but if there are people that's what drew them over, they're going to get to see Frankie Kazarian.
Right. Yeah. Because unless you were following TNA back in the mid 2000s, when Christian was over there, as Christian Cage,
Right.
he that was a rivalry with him, uh, so it makes sense for them to put them together. Kazarian's always been a fantastic wrestler. The thing is, I just, unless you're a huge wrestling fan, you have no idea who he is.
Right.
And it's funny because I go back and I think about some things. And so, Christian's rivalry with Kazarian, kind of revisits itself 15 years later now. But, I think back, I actually went to a TNA house show, oh gosh, in 2008. And there was 400 people there. You know what the main event was? Styles and Samoa Joe.
Really?
Yeah. So it's crazy that these people get like these big platforms now. So that part's nice to see. With, Christian kind of making that odd move over to AEW,
Yeah.
but it does at least shine some different lights on, because like you said, you might have people that are Christian fans that maybe they followed him to a point, they really through TNA, whatever, but then it does enable can get some light back on people like Frankie Kazarian, or anyone else that they decide to put in there, because I assume that moving forward he may be placed with some younger folks just to bump him up a little bit,
Right.
because I can't see them making him a long-term, long-run face with any title on it, but I could be wrong.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it's cool too because, along those same lines, like, obviously Sting is in AEW right now.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to put Sting up against, some young talent and have him, go over the talent, or have the talent go over him, he's a mentor.
Right.
So
Right. And that's the way it should be right now, especially
Yeah.
with him, where he's at in his stage of his, well past, and nothing against him, but
Right.
the stuff with Seth Rollins should have never happened.
No, not at all.
With him, and that those matches should never have happened. And I'm glad that's how he's being used now, because that's how he should have been used a handful of years ago.
And that's one of the things that I really like about AEW, the way that they're doing that with, guys like Jake the Snake, Tully Blanchard, and Tully Blanchard's with
Tully Blanchard. Yep.
With FTR, and who, for those of you who don't watch AEW, the Revival from WWE. You've got Arn with Cody. You've got these guys, these recognizable names that have been around the business and that are legends. But instead of trying to trot them out into the ring and make them perform, they're using their talents the way they should be used. They're using them to help guide the next generation. So Sting is with Darby Allin, who, I'm not a huge Darby Allin fan, but I get it. It works. The two of them together work. Great wrestler. I just, he's one of those guys, kind of like Ray, where I respect what they do, but they're just not my favorite.
Right. I go with the Bischoff thing on that. He talks about this. I don't know if he talks about this in his book, Controversy Creates Cash, or I just heard him talk about this on podcasts. I'm a big Bischoff fan. I think I've made that point in this.
No,
podcast.
Not you.
But he talks about wrestling like a buffet, and there's something for everybody. Yeah. And I really firmly buy into that, notion, because there's some people like the big guys, believe it or not, there's people out there that are huge wrestling fans that probably hate the Undertaker.
I mean, I don't know how, but
it's possible.
Right.
But, I think a good point, and I've already kind of, knocked on him before, but there's a lot of wrestling fans that just don't like Hogan.
I've found myself more and more among their number.
Right. The original people that I saw with that were more like the old school Ric Flair fans. And then as I've gotten older, it's like, I was a big Hogan fan because, America, yeah, whatever. And, eat your vitamins and say your prayers. To me, that was cool. like we all were when we were
Right.
growing up.
Right.
And I really loved NWO, Hollywood Hogan and all that. I love that too. Um, but then I realized as I really started diving in, watching some really cool stuff and different things, like, wow, just he's a big guy, but what just not a good
Right.
wrestler.
Right. 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 No, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I just, he was cool when I was a kid, and before I knew as much as I know now. And honestly, and I'll even be the one to put this out there, before we actually got to see behind the curtain and see what kind of people they were too. Because I'm not gonna lie, part of my reason for not liking him is because I feel like he's kind of a dirtbag,
Right, right.
and I hate
Yeah.
that that's like tinting my view of him. And I know that if I found out a lot about some of the other old school wrestlers, I'd be like, man, they're all dirtbags. But Hogan, it seems, is more pronounced. Like, and how much of that he brings on himself is arguable.
Right.
But
And I think that'd be a good time to do my little thing. I didn't have it on the notes here, but I wanted to mention it. Uh, I've talked about this with you several times over, but Dark Side of the Ring on Vice,
yes,
they've recently redid some of their first season episodes, and I think they're going to spill into season 2. They've added some content. It's called Dark Side of the Ring Confidential,
hmm.
and so I don't know if when this is another story for another day. But the cool thing is they bring the show's creators on. They talk about some of these deep dark things. It's like, oh my gosh, like these extra things. And so they've added some deleted scenes and whatever. But just like you said with Hogan, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a dirtbag, and they don't, obviously Dark Side of the Ring goes like much deeper, darker things, but the I think this part that's interesting to me, and so that kind of circle all the way back to AEW. I think they're doing it right with bringing these veterans in. They're not overusing them. They're certainly not making them, oh, you're gonna be doing this ladder cage death match at age 67.
Hmm.
You know, um,
They're not having them come out and pretend that they impregnated their daughter's rival.
exactly. It's because that's content that would get removed.
It's content that should be removed. It's friggin' terrible. Not because it's offensive because it offends people. It's offensive because it's friggin' terrible.
Right. But it's funny because you have all of these, that talent there that's we grew up with, or even before us, really, that's kind of paving the way with some of these young guys. So they're doing it right. Uh, you know, uh, the unfortunate thing is that you do have those guys, and we can't see them wrestle because it's just not in their wheelhouse these days. So
Right.
but yeah, I think we went around the block there a couple times doing the stuff there with AEW. But man, I think overall, I think this is a good one.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I know you got some stuff you got to do, so I'm gonna let you out of here. But appreciate, as always, talking with you, and hopefully everybody listening likes it, and we'll have to get back to it for maybe we'll hit another episode next week.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
Yep, have a good one, guys.